Michael Joseph Jackson was born in Gary, Indiana, on August 29, 1958. He was the eighth of 10 children in the Jackson family, a working-class African-American family living in a two-bedroom house on Jackson Street. His mother, Catherine Jackson, née Scruggs, played clarinet, cello, and piano, had aspired to be a country and western performer, and worked part-time at Sears. She was a Jehovah's Witness. His father, Joe Jackson, was a former boxer, crane operator at U.S. Steel, and guitarist for local rhythm and blues band the Falcons. Joe's great-grandfather, July Jack Gale, was a U.S. Army Scout. Family lore held that he was also a Native American medicine man. Michael grew up with 3 sisters, Rebby, Latoya, and Janet, and 5 brothers, Jackie, Tito, Jermaine, Marlon, and Randy. A 6th brother, Marlon's twin Brandon, died shortly after his birth. In 1964, Michael and Marlon joined the Jackson Brothers, a band formed by their father which included Jackie, Tito, and Jermaine, as backup musicians playing congas and tambourine. Michael said his father physically and emotionally abused him during rehearsals. He recalled that Joe often sat in a chair with a belt in his hand, ready to punish any mistakes. Joe acknowledged that he regularly whipped Michael. Jackie, Tito, Jermaine, and Marlon denied that their father was abusive and said that the whippings, which had a deeper impact on Michael because he was younger, kept them disciplined and out of trouble. Michael said that during his youth he was lonely and isolated. Later in 1965, Michael began sharing lead vocals with Jermaine, and the group's name was changed to the Jackson 5. In 1965, the group won a talent show. Michael performed the dance to Robert Parker's 1965 song Barefootin' and sang The Temptations' My Girl. From 1966 to 1968, the Jacksons 5 toured the Midwest. They frequently played at a string of black clubs known as the Chitlin Circuit as the opening act for artists such as Sam V. Dave, The O'Jays, Gladys Knight, and Etta James. The Jackson 5 also performed at clubs and cocktail lounges, where striptease shows were featured, and at local auditoriums and high school dances. In August 1967, while touring the East Coast, they won a weekly amateur night concert at the Apollo Theater in Harlem. The Jackson 5 recorded several songs for a Gary record label, Steeltown Records. Their first single, Big Boy, was released in 1968. Bobby Taylor of Bobby Taylor v. the Vancouvers brought the Jackson 5 to Motown after they opened for Taylor at Chicago's Regal Theater in 1968. Taylor produced some of their early Motown recordings, including a version of Who's Lovin' You. After signing with Motown, the Jackson family relocated to Los Angeles. In 1969, Motown executives decided Diana Ross should introduce the Jackson 5 to the public, partly to bolster her career in television, sending off what was considered Motown's last product of its production line. The Jackson 5 made their first television appearance in 1969 in the Miss Black America pageant, performing a cover of It's Your Thing. Rolling Stone later described the young Michael as a prodigy with overwhelming musical gifts who quickly emerged as the main draw and lead singer. In January 1970, I Want You Back became the first Jackson 5 song to reach #1 on the US Billboard Hot 100. It stayed there for 4 weeks. 3 more singles with Motown topped the chart: ABC, The Love You Save, and I'll Be There. In May 1971, the Jackson family moved into a large house at Havenhurst, a 2-acre, 0.81 hectares, estate in Encino, California. During this period, Michael developed from a child performer into a teen idol. Between 1972 and 1975, he released 4 solo studio albums with Motown: Got to Be There, 1972, Ben, 1972, Music v. Me, 1973, and Forever, Michael, 1975. Got to Be There and Ben, the title tracks from his first 2 solo albums, sold well as singles, as did a cover of Bobby Day's Rockin' Robin. Michael maintained ties to the Jackson 5. The Jackson 5 were later described as a cutting-edge example of black crossover artists. They were frustrated by Motown's refusal to allow them creative input. Jackson's performance of their top 5 single Dancing Machine on Soul Train popularized the robot dance. The Jackson 5 left Motown in 1975, signing with Epic Records and renaming themselves the Jacksons. Their younger brother Randy joined the band around this time. Jermaine stayed with Motown and pursued a solo career. The Jacksons continued to tour internationally and released 6 more albums between 1976 and 1984. Michael, the group's main songwriter during this time, wrote songs such as Shake Your Body, Down to the Ground, 1978, This Place Hotel, 1980, and Can You Feel It, 1980. In 1977, Jackson moved to New York City to star as the Scarecrow in The Wiz, a musical film directed by Sidney Lumet, alongside Diana Ross, Nipsey Russell, and Ted Ross. The film was a box office failure. Its score was arranged by Quincy Jones, who later produced 3 of Jackson's solo albums. During his time in New York, Jackson frequented the Studio 54 nightclub, where he heard early hip-hop. This influenced his beatboxing on future tracks such as Working Day and Night. In 1978, Jackson felt unsatisfied with his nose and decided to have a rhinoplasty. He was referred to Stephen Heflin, who performed his operations. Jackson's 5th solo album and first album as an adult, Off the Wall, 1979, established him as a solo performer and helped him move from the bubblegum pop of his youth to more complex sounds. It produced 4 top 10 entries in the US, Off the Wall, She's Out of My Life, and the chart-topping singles Don't Stop Till You Get Enough and Rock With You. The album reached number 3 on the US Billboard 200 and sold over 20 million copies worldwide. He also won a Grammy Award for Best Male R&B Vocal Performance for 1979 with Don't Stop Till You Get Enough. In 1980, Jackson won 3 American Music Awards for his solo work: Favorite Soul/R&B Album, Favorite Soul/R&B Male Artist, and Favorite Soul/R&B Single for Don't Stop Till You Get Enough. In 1981, Jackson was the American Music Awards winner for Favorite Soul/R&B Album and Favorite Soul/R&B Male Artist. Jackson felt Off the Wall should have made a bigger impact, and was determined to exceed expectations with his next release. In 1980, he secured the highest royalty rate in the music industry, 37% of wholesale album profit. In 1982, Jackson contributed Someone in the Dark to the audiobook for the film E.T. the Extraterrestrial. Jackson's 6th album, Thriller, was released in late 1982. It was the best-selling album worldwide in 1983, and became the best-selling album of all time in the US and the best-selling album of all time worldwide, selling an estimated 70 million copies. It topped the Billboard 200 chart for 37 weeks and was in the top 10 of the 200 for 80 consecutive weeks. It was the first album to produce 7 Billboard Hot 100 Top 10 singles, including Billie Jean, Beat It, and Wanna Be Startin' Somethin'. On March 25, 1983, Jackson reunited with his brothers for Motown 25, Yesterday, Today, Forever, an NBC television special. The show aired on May 16 to an estimated audience of 47 million, and featured the Jacksons and other Motown stars. Jackson's solo performance of Billie Jean earned him his first Emmy Award nomination. Wearing a glove decorated with rhinestones, he debuted his moonwalk dance, which Jeffrey Daniel had taught him 3 years earlier, and it became his signature dance in his repertoire. Jackson had originally turned down the invitation to the show, believing he had been doing too much television. But at the request of Motown founder Berry Gordy, he performed in exchange for an opportunity to do a solo performance. Rolling Stone reporter Mikal Gilmore called the performance extraordinary. Jackson's performance drew comparisons to Elvis Presley's and the Beatles' appearances on The Ed Sullivan Show. Anna Kisselgoff of the New York Times praised the perfect timing and technique involved in the dance. Gordy described being mesmerized by the performance. British Vogue called Jackson a fashion pioneer, who gave new meaning to moonwalking, immortalized solitary, and sparkly gloves. At the 26th Annual Grammy Awards, Thriller won 8 awards, and Jackson won an award for the E.T. the Extraterrestrial storybook. Winning 8 Grammys in one ceremony is a record he holds with the band Santana. Jackson and Quincy Jones won the award for Producer of the Year, non-classical. Thriller won Album of the Year, with Jackson as the album's artist and Jones as its co-producer, and the single won Best Pop Vocal Performance, Male, award for Jackson. Beat It won Record of the Year and Best Rock Vocal Performance, Male. Billie Jean won 2 Grammy Awards, Best R&B Song and Best R&B Vocal Performance, Male, with Jackson as songwriter and singer, respectively. Thriller won the Grammy for Best Engineered Recording, Non-Classical, acknowledging Bruce Sweetin for his work on the album. At the 11th Annual American Music Awards, Jackson won another 8 awards and became the youngest artist to win the Award of Merit. He also won Favorite Male Artist, Favorite Soul/R&B Artist, and Favorite Pop/Rock Artist. Beat It won Favorite Soul/R&B Video, Favorite Pop/Rock Video and Favorite Pop/Rock Single. The album won Favorite Soul/R&B Album and Favorite Pop/Rock Album. Thriller's sales doubled after the release of an extended music video, Michael Jackson's Thriller, which sees Jackson dancing with a horde of zombies. The success transformed Jackson into a dominant force in global pop culture, and the album conquered racial divides. Jackson had the highest royalty rate in the music industry at that point, with about $2 for every album sold, equivalent to $6 in 2024, and was making record-breaking profits. Dolls modeled after Jackson appeared in stores in May 1984 for $12 each. In the same year, the making of Michael Jackson's Thriller, a documentary about the music video, won a Grammy for Best Music Video, Long Form. Time described Jackson's influence at that point as star of records, radio, rock video. A one-man rescue team for the music business. A songwriter who sets the beat for a decade. A dancer with the fanciest feet on the street. A singer who cuts across all boundaries of taste and style and color too. The New York Times wrote, in the world of pop music, there is Michael Jackson and there is everybody else. In November 1983, Jackson and his brothers partnered with PepsiCo in a $5 million promotional deal that broke records for a celebrity endorsement, equivalent to $15.8 million in 2024. The first Pepsi campaign, which ran in the US from 1983 to 1984 and launched its new generation theme, included tour sponsorship, public relations events, and in-store displays. Jackson helped to create the advertisement and suggested using his song Billie Jean, with revised lyrics, as its jingle. On January 27, 1984, Michael and other members of the Jacksons filmed a Pepsi commercial overseen by Phil Dusenberry, a BBDO ad agency executive, and Alan Potash, Pepsi's worldwide creative director, at the Shrine Auditorium in Los Angeles. During a simulated concert before a full house of fans, pyrotechnics accidentally set Jackson's hair on fire, causing second-degree burns to his scalp. Jackson underwent treatment to hide the scars and had his third rhinoplasty shortly thereafter. Pepsi settled out of court, and Jackson donated the $1.5 million, equivalent to $4.5 million in 2024, settlement to the Brotman Medical Center in Culver City, California. Its now closed Michael Jackson Burn Center was named in his honor. Jackson signed a second agreement with Pepsi in the late 1980s for $10 million, equivalent to $27.7 million in 2024. The second campaign covered 20 countries and provided financial support for Jackson's Bad Album and 1987 to 1988 World Tour. Jackson had endorsements and advertising deals with other companies, such as LA Gear, Suzuki, and Sony, but none were as significant as his deals with Pepsi. The Victory Tour of 1984 headlined the Jacksons and showcased Jackson's new solo material to more than 2 million Americans. It was the last tour he did with his brothers. Following controversy over the concert's ticket sales, Jackson donated his share of the proceeds, an estimated $3 to $5 million, to charity. During the last concert of the Victory Tour at the Dodger Stadium in Los Angeles, Jackson announced his split from the Jacksons during Shake Your Body. We Are the World and Other Commercial Activities, 1985. With Lionel Richie, Jackson co-wrote the charity single We Are the World, 1985, which raised money for the poor in the US and Africa, 96. 97, it earned $63 million, equivalent to $184 million in 2024, and became one of the best-selling singles of all time, with 20 million copies sold. It won 4 Grammy Awards in 1985, including Song of the Year for Jackson and Ritchie. Jackson, Jones, and the promoter Ken Cragen received special awards for their roles in the song's creation. Jackson collaborated with Paul McCartney in the early 1980s, and learned that McCartney was making $40 million a year from owning the rights to other artists' songs. By 1983, Jackson had begun buying publishing rights to other songs, but he was careful with his acquisitions, only bidding on a few of the dozens that were offered to him. Jackson's early acquisitions of music catalogs and song copyrights such as the Sly Stone collection included Everyday People, 1968, Len Barry's 1, 2, 3, 1965, and Dion DeMucky's The Wanderer, 1961, and Runaround Sue, 1961. In 1984, Robert Holmes à Court announced he was selling the ATV Music Publishing catalog comprising the publishing rights to nearly 4,000 songs, including most of the Beatles' material. In 1981, McCartney had been offered the catalog for £20 million, $40 million, equivalent to $138 million in 2024. Jackson submitted a bid of $46 million, equivalent to $139 million in 2024, on November 20, 1984. When Jackson and McCartney were unable to make a joint purchase, McCartney did not want to be the sole owner of the Beatles' songs, and did not pursue an offer on his own. Jackson's agents were unable to come to a deal, and in May 1985 left talks after having spent more than $1 million and 4 months of due diligence work on the negotiations. In June 1985, Jackson and Branca learned that Charles Koppelman's and Martin Bandier's The Entertainment Company had made a tentative offer to buy ATV Music for $50 million. In early August, Holmes à Court contacted Jackson and talks resumed. Jackson's increased bid of $47.5 million, equivalent to $139 million in 2024, was accepted because he could close the deal more quickly, having already completed due diligence. Jackson agreed to visit Holmes à Court in Australia, where he would appear on the Channel 7 Perth Telethon 105. His purchase of ATV Music was finalized on August 10, 1985. Increased tabloid speculation, 1986 to 1987. Jackson's skin had been medium brown during his youth, but from the mid-1980s gradually grew paler. The change drew widespread media coverage, including speculation that he had been bleaching his skin. His dermatologist, Arnold Klein, said he observed in 1983 that Jackson had vitiligo, a condition characterized by patches of the skin losing their pigment. He also identified discoid lupus erythematosus in Jackson. He diagnosed Jackson with lupus that year, and with vitiligo in 1986. Vitiligo's drastic effects on the body can cause psychological distress. Jackson used fair-colored makeup, and possibly skin-bleaching prescription creams, to cover up the uneven blotches of color caused by the illness. The creams would depigment the blotches, and, with the application of makeup, he could appear very pale. Jackson said he had not purposely bleached his skin and could not control his vitiligo, adding, "When people make up stories that I don't want to be who I am, it hurts me." He became friends with Klein and Klein's assistant, Debbie Rowe. Rowe later became Jackson's second wife and the mother of his first 2 children. In his 1988 autobiography and a 1993 interview, Jackson said he had had 2 rhinoplasty surgeries and a cleft chin surgery, but no more than that. He said he lost weight in the early 1980s because of a change in diet to achieve a dancer's body. Witnesses reported that he was often dizzy, and speculated he was suffering from anorexia nervosa. Periods of weight loss became a recurring problem later in his life. After his death, Jackson's mother said that he first turned to cosmetic procedures to remedy his vitiligo, because he did not want to look like a spotted cow. She said he had received more than the 2 cosmetic surgeries he claimed and speculated that he had become addicted to them. In 1986, it was reported that Jackson slept in a hyperbaric oxygen chamber to slow aging. He denied the story, although it was alleged that Jackson leaked an image of him sleeping in a glass chamber. According to Jackson, this was a promotional shot from an upcoming space opera featuring himself, to the National Enquirer. It was also reported that Jackson took female hormone shots to keep his voice high and facial hair wispy, proposed to Elizabeth Taylor and possibly had a shrine of her, and had cosmetic surgery on his eyes. Jackson's manager Frank Dilio denied all of them, except for Jackson having a chamber. Dilio added, "I don't know if he sleeps in it. I'm not for it. But Michael thinks it's something that's probably healthy for him. He's a bit of a health fanatic." When Jackson took his pet chimpanzee Bubbles to tour in Japan, the media portrayed Jackson as an aspiring Disney cartoon character who befriended animals. It was also reported that Jackson had offered to buy the bones of Joseph Merrick, the Elephant Man. In June 1987, the Chicago Tribune reported Jackson's publicist bidding $1 million for the skeleton to the London Hospital Medical College on his behalf. The college maintained the skeleton was not for sale. Dilio said Jackson had an absorbing interest in Merrick, purely based on his awareness of the ethical, medical, and historical significance. In September 1986, using the oxygen chamber story, the British tabloid The Sun branded Jackson Wacko Jacko, a name Jackson came to despise. The Atlantic noted that the name Jacko has racist connotations, as it originates from Jacko Macaco, a monkey used in monkey baiting matches at the Westminster Pit in the early 1820s, and Jacko was used in Cockney slang to refer to monkeys in general. Jackson worked with George Lucas and Francis Ford Coppola on the 17-minute $30 million 3D film Captain EO, which ran from 1986 at Disneyland and Epcot, and later at Tokyo Disneyland and Euro Disneyland. After having been removed in the late 1990s, it returned to the theme park for several years after Jackson's death. As a Jehovah's Witness, Jackson would evangelize door-to-door while donning a disguise. In 1987, Ebony reported that Jackson had disassociated himself from the Jehovah's Witnesses. Katherine Jackson said this might have been because some witnesses strongly opposed the Thriller video, which Michael denounced in a witness publication in 1984. While former members are usually shunned by their families, Jackson's mother kept in contact with him. In 2001, Jackson told an interviewer he was still a Jehovah's Witness. Bad, Autobiography, and Neverland, 1987 to 1990. Jackson's first album in 5 years, Bad, 1987, was highly anticipated, with the industry expecting another major success. It became the first album to produce 5 US #1 singles: I Just Can't Stop Loving You, Bad, The Way You Make Me Feel, Man in the Mirror, and Dirty Diana. Another song, Smooth Criminal, peaked at number 7. Bad won the 1988 Grammy for Best Engineered Recording, Non-Classical, and the 1990 Grammy Award for Best Music Video, Short Form for Leave Me Alone. Jackson won an Award of Achievement at the American Music Awards in 1989 after Bad generated 5 #1 singles, became the first album to top the charts in 25 countries and the best-selling album worldwide in 1987 and 1988. The Bad tour ran from September 12, 1987, to January 27, 1989, 138, in Japan. The tour had 14 sellouts and drew 570,000 people, nearly tripling the previous record for a single tour. The 504,000 people who attended 7 sold-out shows at Wembley Stadium set a new Guinness World Record. Bad cemented Jackson's status as a dominant music force. The album has sold over 35 million copies worldwide, which ranks it amongst the best-selling albums ever. In 1988, Jackson released his autobiography, Moonwalk, with input from Stephen Davis and Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis. It sold 200,000 copies, and reached the top of the New York Times bestsellers list. Jackson discussed his childhood, the Jackson 5, and the abuse from his father. He attributed his changing facial appearance to 3 plastic surgeries: puberty, weight loss, a strict vegetarian diet, a change in hairstyle, and stage lighting. In June, Jackson was honored with the Grand Vermeil Medal of the City of Paris by the then Mayor of Paris Jacques Chirac during his stay in the city as part of the Bad tour. On July 20th, he became the first commoner in history to enter London's Guildhall through the building's royal entrance. In October, Jackson released a film, Moonwalker, which featured live footage and short films starring Jackson and Joe Pesci. In the US, it was released direct-to-video and became the best-selling video cassette in the country. The Recording Industry Association of America, RIAA, certified it as 8 times platinum in the US. In March 1988, Jackson purchased 2,700 acres, 11 square kilometers, of land near Santa Ynez, California, to build a new home, Neverland Ranch, at a cost of $17 million, equivalent to $45 million in 2024. 158. He installed a Ferris wheel, a carousel, a movie theater and a zoo. A security staff of 40 patrolled the grounds. Shortly afterwards, he appeared in the first Western television advertisement in the Soviet Union. Jackson became known as the King of Pop, a nickname that Jackson's publicists embraced. When Elizabeth Taylor presented him with the Soul Train Heritage Award in 1989, she called him the true king of pop, rock and soul. President George H.W. Bush designated him the White House's Artist of the Decade. At the 38th BMI Awards in 1990, Jackson was the first person to be honored with an award named after its recipient. From 1985 to 1990, Jackson donated $455,000 to the United Negro College Fund, and all profits from his Single Man in the Mirror went to charity. His rendition of You Were There at Sammy Davis Jr.'s 60th birthday celebration won Jackson a second Emmy nomination. Jackson was the best-selling artist of the 1980s. Dangerous and Public Social Work, 1991 to 1993. In March 1991, Jackson renewed his contract with Sony for $65 million, equivalent to $150 million in 2024, a record-breaking deal, beating Neil Diamond's renewal contract with Columbia Records. In 1991, he released his eighth album, Dangerous, co-produced with Teddy Riley. It was certified 8 times platinum in the US, and by 2018 had sold 32 million copies worldwide. In the US, the first single, Black or White, was the album's highest-charting song. It was #1 on the Billboard Hot 100 for 7 weeks and achieved similar chart performances worldwide. The second single, Remember the Time, peaked at #3 on the Billboard Hot 100 Singles chart. At the end of 1992, Dangerous was the best-selling album of the year worldwide and Black or White the best-selling single of the year worldwide at the Billboard Music Awards. In 1993, he performed Remember the Time at the Soul Train Music Awards in a chair, saying he twisted his ankle during dance rehearsals. In the UK, Heal the World made #2 on the charts in 1992. Jackson founded the Heal the World Foundation in 1992. The charity brought underprivileged children to Jackson's ranch to use the theme park rides, and sent millions of dollars around the globe to help children threatened by war, poverty, and disease. That July, Jackson published his second book, Dancing the Dream, a collection of poetry. The Dangerous World Tour ran between June 1992 and November 1993 and grossed $100 million, equivalent to $220 million in 2024. Jackson performed for over 3.5 million people in 70 concerts, all of which were outside the US. Part of the proceeds went to Heal the World Foundation. Jackson sold the broadcast rights of the tour to HBO for $20 million, equivalent to $45 million in 2024, a record-breaking deal that still stands. Following the death of HIV/AIDS spokesperson and friend Ryan White, Jackson pleaded with the Clinton administration at Bill Clinton's inaugural gala to give more money to HIV/AIDS charities and research, and performed Gone Too Soon, a song dedicated to White, and Heal the World at the gala. Jackson visited Africa in early 1992. On his first stop in Gabon, he was greeted by more than 100,000 people, some of them carrying signs that read "Welcome Home, Michael," and was awarded an Officer of the National Order of Merit from President Omar Bongo. During his trip to Ivory Coast, Jackson drew larger crowds than Pope John Paul II on his previous visits. He was crowned King Sani by a tribal chief in the Ivorian village of Krine Jabo, where he thanked the dignitaries in French and English, signed documents formalizing his kingship, and sat on a golden throne while presiding over ceremonial dances. In January 1993, Jackson performed at the Super Bowl XXVII halftime show in Pasadena, California. The NFL sought a big-name artist to keep ratings high during halftime following dwindling audience figures. With 133.4 million viewers, it was the first Super Bowl whose halftime show drew greater audience figures than the game. Jackson played Jam, Billie Jean, Black or White, and Heal the World. Dangerous rose 90 places in the US albums chart after the performance. Jackson gave a 90-minute interview with Oprah Winfrey on February 10, 1993. He spoke of his childhood abuse at the hands of his father. He believed he had missed out on much of his childhood, and said that he often cried from loneliness. He denied tabloid rumors that he had bought the bones of the Elephant Man, slept in a hyperbaric oxygen chamber, or bleached his skin, and stated for the first time that he had vitiligo. After the interview, Dangerous re-entered the US albums chart in the top 10, more than a year after its release. The interview itself became the most watched television interview in United States history to date, with more than 90 million viewers. In January 1993, Jackson won 3 American Music Awards: Favorite Pop/Rock Album, Dangerous; Favorite Soul/R&B Single, Remember the Time, and was the first to win the International Artist Award of Excellence. In February, he won the Living Legend Award at the 35th Annual Grammy Awards in Los Angeles. He attended the award ceremony with Brooke Shields. Dangerous was nominated for Best Vocal Performance, for Black or White, Best R&B Vocal Performance, Jam, and Best R&B Song, Jam, and Bruce Sweetin and Teddy Riley won the Grammy for Best Engineered, Non-Classical. First child sexual abuse accusations and first marriage, 1993 to 1995. In early 1993, Michael Jackson befriended 13-year-old Jordan Chandler through Jordan's stepfather, who became acquainted after Jackson had rented a vehicle, 197. On July 8, 1993, Evan Chandler, Jordan's father and a Los Angeles dentist, was recorded threatening to destroy Jackson's career with a carefully planned plot, with people in place ready to set it in motion if Jackson did not meet his demands. If I go through with this, I win big time. There's no way I lose. On July 9th, Jackson's investigator, Anthony Pellicano, met Jordan, who denied any abuse or inappropriate touching by Jackson. Evan Chandler's lawyer would later call Beverly Hills psychiatrist Dr. Mathis Abrams and present him with a hypothetical situation. In reply, and without having met either Jordan Chandler or his parents, Abrams sent Rothman a 2-page letter in which he states that reasonable suspicion would exist that sexual abuse may have occurred. After receiving the letter from Dr. Abrams, Evan Chandler allegedly received a confession from his son Jordan and demanded $20 million from Jackson on August 4, 1993, without going to law enforcement regarding the reports of the abuse that was claimed to have taken place, but Jackson refused. From August 9 to 13, 1993, Evan Chandler and his legal team made various counteroffers to secure a settlement from Jackson, escalating their financial demands after his refusal to pay the initial $20 million, with Evan later filing a civil suit in September demanding $30 million for alleged damages, which were all denied by Jackson, prompting Chandler to go public with the claims of child molestation. Jackson's older sister LaToya accused him of being a pedophile. She later retracted this, saying she had been forced into it by her abusive husband. Prosecutors raided Neverland Ranch and other places of residency while Jackson was on tour in August, but no leads were found as the investigators ruled that there was no medical evidence or physical evidence. Additionally, hundreds of children were investigated, but all of them stated no abuse or improper behavior had taken place. Attention was later brought to 2 legal art books depicting featuring young boys playing, running, and swimming in various states of undress. However, Jackson denied knowing of the book's content and claimed if they were there, someone had to have sent them to him and he did not open them. No child pornography or other incriminating evidence was found. In December 1993, prosecutor Thomas W. Sneddon Jr. filed a court order to conduct a strip search of Jackson, based on a drawing provided by the accuser and submitted to authorities. According to Reuters and USA Today, the description of Jackson's genitalia did not match the photographs taken during the police investigation. Prosecutors sought testimony from Jackson's doctors and family members. The grand jury subsequently subpoenaed Jackson's mother, reportedly to assess whether there were any physical alterations compared to the description. In November 1993, Jackson requested that the civil trial be postponed until after the criminal hearing was completed due to a violation of his civil rights, under the circumstances of having to defend himself under double jeopardy. This motion was denied, and in January 1994, the civil lawsuit was settled for $15,331,250, with separate payments of $1.5 million for Evan and June Chandler, coming out to a total of $18.3 million allocated to the Chandler family, lower than the initial demand of $20 to $30 million requested by Evan Chandler. The document shows that the Chandlers dropped the child molestation allegations from their complaint, with Jackson's settlement being filed over claims of negligence. It was later revealed that this settlement did not prevent the Chandlers from testifying in the criminal case. The police never pressed criminal charges. The prosecution continued to investigate Jackson from January to June 1994, with Jordan Chandler continuing to cooperate with investigators. By July 1994, multiple grand juries had been called. Jurors remarked that no damaging evidence was heard against Jackson. The Santa Barbara grand jury in Michael Jackson's case was dismissed, and one juror said he heard no evidence against Jackson. Another juror told CNN that he heard no evidence against him, Jackson, during the hearing. On September 21, 1994, after 400 witnesses had been investigated with another 30 called in front of the grand juries, the investigation was closed. A few potential leads had been found, but all of them turned out to be false. Jackson had been taking painkillers for his reconstructive scalp surgeries, administered due to the Pepsi commercial accident in 1984, and became dependent on them to cope with the stress of the sexual abuse allegations. On November 12, 1993, Jackson canceled the remainder of the Dangerous World Tour due to health problems, stress from the allegations, and painkiller addiction. He thanked his close friend Elizabeth Taylor for support, encouragement, and counsel. The end of the tour concluded his sponsorship deal with Pepsi. In late 1993, Jackson proposed to Lisa Marie Presley, the daughter of Elvis Presley, over the phone. They were married in La Vega, Dominican Republic, in May 1994 by civil judge Hugo Francisco Alvarez Perez. The tabloid media speculated that the wedding was a publicity stunt to deflect away from Jackson's sexual abuse allegations and jumpstart Presley's career as a singer. Their marriage ended little more than a year later, and they separated in December 1995. Presley cited irreconcilable differences when filing for divorce the next month, and only sought to reclaim her maiden name as her settlement. After the divorce, Judge Perez said, "They lasted longer than I thought they would. I gave them a year. They lasted a year and a half." Presley later said she and Jackson had attempted to reconcile intermittently for 4 years following their divorce, and that she had traveled the world to be with him. Jackson composed music for the Sega Genesis video game Sonic the Hedgehog 3, 1994, but left the project around the time the sexual abuse allegations surfaced and went uncredited. Jackson's involvement was the subject of fan speculation for decades, until Sonic co-creator Yuji Naka confirmed it in 2022. Sega Technical Institute director Roger Hector and Sonic co-creator Naoto Oshima said that Jackson was terminated and his music reworked following the allegations. However, Jackson's musical director Brad Buxer and other members of Jackson's team said he went uncredited because he was unhappy with how the Genesis replicated his music. The game's credits theme served as the basis for Jackson's 1996 song Stranger in Moscow. History, Second Marriage, Fatherhood, and Blood on the Dance Floor, History in the Mix, 1995 to 1997. In June 1995, Jackson released the double album History, Past, Present and Future, Book I. The first disc, History Begins, is a greatest hits album, reissued in 2001 as Greatest Hits, History, Volume 1. The second disc, History Continues, contains 13 original songs and 2 cover versions. The album debuted at number 1 on the charts and has been certified for 8 million shipments in the US. It is the best-selling multi-disc album of all time, with 20 million copies, 40 million units, sold worldwide. History received a Grammy nomination for Album of the Year. The New York Times reviewed it as the testimony of a musician whose self-pity now equals his talent. The first single from History was Scream/Childhood. Scream, a duet with Jackson's youngest sister Janet, protests the media's treatment of Jackson during the 1993 child abuse allegations against him. The single reached number 5 on the Billboard Hot 100 and received a Grammy nomination for Best Pop Collaboration with Vocals. The second single, You Are Not Alone, holds the Guinness World Record for the first song to debut at number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100 chart. It received a Grammy nomination for Best Pop Vocal Performance in 1995. In 1995, the Anti-Defamation League and other groups complained that "Jew me, sue me, everybody do me / kick me, kike me, don't you black or white me," the original lyrics of They Don't Care About Us, were anti-Semitic. Jackson released a revised version of the song. In late 1995, Jackson was admitted to a hospital after collapsing during rehearsals for a televised performance, caused by a stress-related panic attack. In November, Jackson merged his ATV music catalog with Sony's music publishing division, creating Sony/ATV Music Publishing. He retained ownership of half the company, earning $95 million up front, equivalent to $196 million in 2024, as well as the rights to more songs. Earth Song was the third single released from history, and topped the UK singles chart for 6 weeks over Christmas 1995. It became the 87th best-selling single in the UK. At the 1996 Brit Awards, Jackson's performance of Earth Song was disrupted by Pulp singer Jarvis Cocker, who was protesting what Cocker saw as Jackson's Christ-like persona. Jackson said the stage invasion was disgusting and cowardly. In 1996, Jackson won a Grammy for Best Music Video, Short Form, for Scream and an American Music Award for Favorite Pop/Rock Male Artist. In July 1996, Jackson performed for Sultan Hassan al-Bolkiah's 50th birthday at Jerudong Park Amphitheater, which was specifically built for that birthday concert. Jackson was reportedly paid $17 million, equivalent to $34 million in 2024. Jackson promoted history with the History World Tour, from September 7, 1996, to October 15, 1997. He performed 82 concerts in 5 continents, 35 countries, and 58 cities to over 4.5 million fans, his most attended tour. It grossed $165 million, equivalent to $323 million in 2024. 138. During the tour, in Sydney, Australia, Jackson married Debbie Rowe, a dermatology assistant, who was 6 months pregnant with his first child. Michael Joseph Jackson Jr., commonly known as Prince, was born on February 13, 1997. His sister Paris Michael Catherine Jackson was born on April 3, 1998. Jackson and Rowe divorced in 2000. Rowe conceded custody of the children, with an $8 million settlement, equivalent to $15.1 million in 2024. In 2004, after the second child abuse allegations against Jackson, she returned to court to reclaim custody. The suit was settled in 2006. In 1997, Jackson released Blood on the Dance Floor, History in the Mix, which contained remixes of singles from History and 5 new songs. Worldwide sales stand at 6 million copies, making it the best-selling remix album. It reached number 1 in the UK, as did the single Blood on the Dance Floor. In the US, the album reached number 24 and was certified platinum. Label dispute and Invincible, 1997 to 2002. From October 1997 to September 2001, Jackson worked on his 10th solo album, Invincible, which cost $30 million, equivalent to $53.3 million in 2024, to record, making it the most expensive album of all time. In June 1999, Jackson joined Luciano Pavarotti for a war child benefit concert in Medina, Italy. The show raised $1 million for refugees of the Kosovo War, and additional funds for the children of Guatemala. Later that month, Jackson organized a series of Michael Jackson v. Friends benefit concerts in Germany and Korea. Other artists involved included Slash, The Scorpions, Boys II Men, Luther Vandross, Mariah Carey, R. Rahman, Prabhu Deva Sundaram, Shobana, Andrea Bocelli and Luciano Pavarotti. The proceeds went to the Nelson Mandela Children's Fund, the Red Cross and UNESCO. In 1999, Jackson was presented with the Outstanding Humanitarian Award at Bollywood Movie Awards in New York City, where he noted Mahatma Gandhi to have been an inspiration for him. From August 1999 to 2000, he lived in New York City at 4 East 74th Street. At the turn of the century, Jackson was awarded with the Artist of the 1980s Decade Award at the 27th American Music Awards, and the Best-Selling Pop Male Artist of the Millennium Award at the 12th World Music Awards. In 2000, Guinness World Records recognized him for supporting 39 charities, more than any other entertainer. In September 2001, 2 concerts were held at Madison Square Garden to mark Jackson's 30th year as a solo artist. Jackson performed with his brothers for the first time since 1984. The show also featured Maya, Usher, Whitney Houston, Destiny's Child, Monica, Liza Minnelli, and Slash. The first show was marred by technical lapses, and the crowd booed a speech by Marlon Brando. 45 million people watched the television broadcast of the shows in November according to Nielsen Media Research. After the September 11th attacks, in which Jackson narrowly avoided death by oversleeping and missing a scheduled meeting at the World Trade Center, Jackson helped organize the United We Stand, What More Can I Give benefit concert at Robert F. Kennedy Memorial Stadium in Washington, D.C., on October 21, 2001. Jackson performed What More Can I Give as the finale. The release of Invincible was preceded by a dispute between Jackson and his record label, Sony Music Entertainment. Jackson had expected the licenses to the masters of his albums to revert to him in the early 2000s, after which he would be able to promote the material however he pleased and keep the profits, but clauses in the contract set the revert date years into the future. Jackson sought an early exit from his contract. Invincible was released on October 30, 2001. It was Jackson's first full-length album in 6 years, and the last album of original material he released in his lifetime. It debuted at number 1 in 13 countries, and went on to sell 8 million copies worldwide, receiving double platinum certification in the US. On January 9, 2002, Jackson won his 22nd American Music Award for Artist of the Century. Later that year, an anonymous surrogate mother gave birth to his 3rd child, Prince Michael Jackson II, nicknamed Blanket, who had been conceived by artificial insemination. On November 20th, Jackson briefly held Blanket over the railing of his Berlin hotel room for stories above ground level, prompting widespread criticism in the media. Jackson apologized for the incident, calling it a terrible mistake. On January 22nd, promoter Marcel Avram filed a breach of contract complaint against Jackson for failing to perform 2 planned 1999 concerts. In March, a Santa Maria jury ordered Jackson to pay Avram $5.3 million, equivalent to $9.3 million in 2024. On December 18, 2003, Jackson's attorneys dropped all appeals on the verdict and settled the lawsuit for an undisclosed amount. On April 24, 2002, Jackson performed at Apollo Theater. The concert was a fundraiser for the Democratic National Committee and former President Bill Clinton. The money collected would be used to encourage citizens to vote. It raised $2.5 million, equivalent to $3.8 million in 2024. The concert was called Michael Jackson, Live at the Apollo, and was one of Jackson's final on-stage performances. In July 2002, at Al Sharpton's National Action Network in Harlem, Jackson called the Sony Music chairman Tommy Mottola a racist and very, very, very devilish, and accused him of exploiting black artists for his own gain. The accusation prompted Sharpton to form a coalition investigating whether Mottola exploited black artists. Jackson charged that Mottola had called his colleague of Gotti a fat nigger. Sony issued a statement calling the accusations ludicrous, spiteful, and hurtful, and said Mottola had championed Jackson's career for years. Sony refused to renew Jackson's contract and said that a $25 million, equivalent to $43.7 million in 2024, promotional campaign had failed because Jackson refused to tour in the US for Invincible. Documentary, Number One's Second Child Abuse Allegations and Acquittal, 2002 to 2005. Beginning in May 2002, a documentary film crew led by Martin Bashir followed Jackson for several months. The documentary, broadcast in February 2003 as Living with Michael Jackson, showed Jackson holding hands and discussing sleeping arrangements with a 12-year-old boy. He discussed seeing nothing wrong with having sleepovers with minors and sharing his bed and bedroom with various people, which aroused controversy. He insisted that the sleepovers were not sexual and that his words had been misunderstood. In October 2003, Jackson received the key to the city of Las Vegas from Mayor Oscar Goodman. On November 18, 2003, Sony released Number One's, a greatest hits album. It was certified 5 times platinum by the RIAA and 10 times platinum in the UK for shipments of at least 3 million units. On December 18, 2003, Santa Barbara authorities charged Jackson with 7 counts of child molestation and 2 counts of intoxicating a minor with alcoholic drinks. Jackson denied the allegations and pleaded not guilty. The People vs. Jackson trial began on January 31, 2005, in Santa Maria, California, and lasted until the end of May. Jackson found the experience stressful and it affected his health. If convicted, he would have faced up to 20 years in prison. On June 13, 2005, Jackson was acquitted on all counts. 292 FBI files on Jackson, released in 2009, revealed the FBI's role in the 2005 trial and the 1993 allegations, and showed that the FBI found no evidence of criminal conduct on Jackson's behalf. Final years, financial problems, Thriller 25 and This Is It, 2005 to 2009. After the trial, Jackson became reclusive. In June 2005, he moved to Bahrain as a guest of Sheikh Abdullah. In early 2006, it was announced that Jackson had signed a contract with a Bahrain startup, 2C's Records. Nothing came of the deal, and the 2C CEO, Guy Holmes, later said it was never finalized. Holmes also found that Jackson was on the verge of bankruptcy and was involved in 47 ongoing lawsuits. By September 2006, Jackson was no longer affiliated with 2C's. In April 2006, Jackson agreed to use a piece of his ATV catalog stake, then worth about $1 billion, as collateral against his $270 million worth of loans from Bank of America. Bank of America had sold the loans to Fortress Investments, an investment company that buys distressed loans, the year before. As part of the agreement, Fortress Investments provided Jackson a new loan of $300 million with reduced interest payments, equivalent to $470 million in 2024. Sony Music would have the option to buy half of his stake, or about 25% of the catalog, at a set price. Jackson's financial managers had urged him to shed part of his stake to avoid bankruptcy. The main house at Neverland Ranch was closed as a cost-cutting measure, while Jackson lived in Bahrain at the hospitality of Abdullah. At least 30 of Jackson's employees had not been paid on time and were owed $306,000 in back wages. Jackson was ordered to pay $100,000 in penalties. Jackson never returned to Neverland after his acquittal. In mid-2006, Jackson moved to Grouse Lodge, a residential recording studio near Rosemount, County Westmeath, Ireland. There, he began work on a new album with the American producers will.i.am and Rodney Jenkins. That November, Jackson invited an Access Hollywood camera crew into the studio in Westmeath. On November 15, Jackson briefly joined in on a performance of We Are the World at the World Music Awards in London, his last public performance, and accepted the Diamond Award for sales of 100 million records. He returned to the US in December, settling in Las Vegas. That month, he attended James Brown's funeral in Augusta, Georgia, where he gave a eulogy calling Brown his greatest inspiration. In 2007, Jackson and Sony bought another music publishing company, Famous Music LLC, formerly owned by Viacom. The deal gave Jackson the rights to songs by Eminem and Beck, among others. In a brief interview, Jackson said he had no regrets about his career despite his problems and deliberate attempts to hurt me. That March, Jackson visited a U.S. Army post in Japan, Camp Zama, to greet more than 3,000 troops and their families. As of September, Jackson was still working on his next album, which he never completed. In 2008, for the 25th anniversary of Thriller, Jackson and Sony released Thriller 25, with 2 remixes released as singles, The Girl Is Mine 2008 and Wanna Be Startin' Somethin' 2008. Thriller 25 was the last recorded work released during his life which he was extensively involved with Jackson co-producing the album's remix tracks. For his 50th birthday, Sony BMG released a series of greatest hits albums, King of Pop, with different track lists for different regions. That July, Fortress Investments threatened to foreclose on Neverland Ranch, which he had used as collateral for his loans. Fortress sold Jackson's debts to Colony Capital LLC. In November, Jackson transferred Neverland Ranch's title to Sycamore Valley Ranch Company LLC, a joint venture between Jackson and Colony Capital LLC. The deal earned him $35 million. In 2009, Jackson arranged to sell a collection of his memorabilia of more than 1,000 items through Julian's auction house, but canceled the auction in April. In March 2009, amid speculation about his finances and health, Jackson announced a series of comeback concerts, This Is It, at a press conference at the O2 Arena. The shows were to be his first major concerts since the History World Tour in 1997. Jackson suggested he would retire after the shows. The initial plan was for 10 concerts in London, followed by shows in Paris, New York City and Mumbai. Randy Phillips, the president and chief executive of AEG Live, predicted the first 10 dates would earn Jackson £50 million. The London residency was increased to 50 dates after record-breaking ticket sales. More than 1 million were sold in less than 2 hours. The concerts were to run from July 13, 2009, to March 6, 2010. Jackson moved to Los Angeles, where he rehearsed in the weeks leading up to the tour under the direction of the choreographer Kenny Ortega, whom he had worked with during his previous tours. Rehearsals took place at the Forum and the Staples Center owned by AEG. By this point, Jackson's debt had grown to almost $500 million. By the time of his death, he was 3 or 4 months behind payments on his home in San Fernando Valley. The Independent reported that Jackson planned a string of further ventures designed to recoup his debts, including a world tour, a new album, films, a museum and a casino. On June 25, 2009, less than 3 weeks before his concert residency was due to begin in London, with all concerts sold out, Jackson died from cardiac arrest, caused by a propofol and benzodiazepine overdose. Conrad Murray, his personal physician, had given Jackson various medications to help him sleep at his rented mansion in Holmby Hills, Los Angeles. Paramedics received a 911 call at 12:21 p.m. Pacific Time, 1921 Universal Time Coordinated, and arrived at the property 4 minutes later. Jackson was not breathing and CPR was performed. Resuscitation efforts continued en route to Ronald Reagan UCLA Medical Center, and for more than an hour after Jackson's arrival there, but were unsuccessful, and Jackson was pronounced dead at 2:26 p.m. Pacific Time, 21:26 Universal Time Coordinated. Murray had administered propofol, lorazepam, and midazolam. Jackson's death was caused by a propofol overdose. News of his death spread quickly online, causing websites to slow down and crash from user overload, and it put unprecedented strain on many services and websites including Google, AOL Instant Messenger, Twitter and Wikipedia. Overall, web traffic rose by between 11% and 20%. MTV and BET aired marathons of Jackson's music videos, and Jackson specials aired on television stations around the world. MTV briefly returned to its original music video format, and they aired hours of Jackson's music videos, with live news specials featuring reactions from MTV personalities and other celebrities.